right now, this next session is going to blow your mind. Szilva, hey, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Doing great. Doing really, really good. So I'm so excited because you cover an area that is so important for artists, and I'm really excited for what you're going to share, because just a short time that I've known you, you've dropped so many great nuggets of wisdom, and so many great your philosophy and the way that you treat your craft and your music is just so cool. And so I want to encourage everybody, grab your pieces of paper and pens, because I know Szilva is going to share so many awesome things. So I'm going to give it to you. So tell us a little bit about what you do, and just so the audience knows what you do, and kind of like where you're specializing. And I first of all, I have to brag, you got a phenomenal voice, and you're a phenomenal singer and producer and artist. But anyway.
I appreciate it, Steve. And I actually want to start by saying thank you for inviting me to be a part of this, and just, share my experiences, and hopefully I'll help someone out there. And Cindy, thank you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Paola. Jenny, if you're here, all you guys, love you. My name is Szilva Vicerti. I'm an Aussie songwriter, lyricist, music producer, and recording artist. I'm now based in LA. I started writing songs in my mid-teens on my guitar, as most songwriters do. I was the lead singer for a funk metal band, and my next project would actually be my introduction to the music industry as a signed pop electronica artist. I was signed to an LA-based management company when I was 18 back in Melbourne. This was my very first music-related contract, and it was so exciting. There were talks of touring in the United States, and my first single gained national radio airplay as a hit prediction on Fox FM, which you probably know of, being an Aussie, Steve. But yeah, all the glitz and glam that came with the magic of the music industry just was right there in front of me. And I was going to live happily ever after. Da 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 da. Cut to the chase. This chapter of my life was short-lived. Promises weren't kept, obligations were not met, and I ended up spending thousands of dollars in legal fees to get out of this crappy deal, because that's what happens when you're in the music industry. And this was my welcome to the music industry moment. So then I went down the indie artist road. It was very clear to me from an early age that I really enjoyed genre hopping when I was writing. It's something that I enjoyed doing very much as a songwriter. The thought of writing songs in a single genre, album after album, just personally bored me to tears. And in a way, it defies the freedom and flow of inspiration and songwriting that I was so passionate about. So yeah, shortly after moving to LA as an independent artist, I began creating incredible music with my extremely talented Platinum Award-winning songwriting collaborator, Chris Landon. We just make such a great team, and we've created songs in genres of pop, but kind of left field pop, dance, again, kind of left field, but wasn't that commercial in the beginning, and I'll go into that in a little bit. Yeah, we did some pop R&B, singer-songwriter, country. I felt right at home because what I was creating was different from the last project, and then to the next project. It was just all over the shop. So we really had that creative freedom. And then I really wanted to get back into performing, because I hadn't done that since I'd been out here. So I formed a band, and basically we did gigs everywhere in LA, like Viper Room, we did House of Blues, we did Universal City Walk, and a stack of other famous venues, which was really fun. There was a different side to that. I managed my band also, and I was paying them all. I had co-written and co-produced the music, so they didn't have any ownership in the music, so therefore obviously I had to compensate them for their time and talent. So I paid for their each and every single rehearsal and every single show out of my own pocket. And I started realizing, wow, the LA music scene is quite different to definitely Australia and probably other parts of America. But in LA, there's that whole pay-to-play deal. So you have to, the band or the artist has to sell X amount of tickets. And sometimes they're 10, 15, or even $20. And if you didn't meet that minimum requirement, the band would have to front that minimum in order to play. And on average, it's like $300 or $400. So if you're playing out regularly, it can be a financial burden. But anyway, that kind of put pressure on me, and it was frustrating to have to do that. I was like, this is kind of taking away from the whole reason I'm here. That's not my role. I'm not a salesperson. I'm an artist. I'm a singer. I want to do what I love. I want to perform. So At that point, I was ready for the next step in my life. I began thinking about how I could monetize my music in other ways other than performing as an indie artist in a bar or a club in LA, because the ROI was not great.
So, and so you were investing, paying your musicians for rehearsals all the way up into the show. So who knows? That's a big amount right there. Then for the show, and then possibly any tickets that you weren't able to sell. So that's your return, and so that's your investment. And then
Right.
what were you selling, merchandise, or how would you hopefully get some return on that?
I delved a little bit in merchandise. When I first moved here, I had some music and merch that I was living off. But then my music kind of changed, and then I formed a band, and we did some photo shoots and we did some promo stuff. I kind of dropped the ball in that area because as an independent artist, it's hard, as we know, just to cover all our bases, especially when we're focusing on sync licensing, because we've got the creative part, and then I do all my own admin when it comes to registering songs and all the metadata and everything, all the making sure the little iTunes file is all perfect and has everything in it. And I have got hundreds of songs, and that's just part of it, the admin part. And then dealing with a band and that whole thing, like suddenly having 3 kids and having to pay them and all that kind of stuff. So, there's only so much you can focus on, and then you just start thinning out yourself. So I wasn't going back to the merchandise stuff. I wasn't really focusing on that. And I was thinking, wow, okay, this whole band thing has to be put on pause for a while. I have all this music, and I continued writing music in a variety of genres, and I was having the time of my life whipping up what came to mind. What I started doing was meeting with music managers and record labels to create new roads and possibly expand my career and whatnot. And they were all so very confused with my collection of multi-genre music, and I was constantly being asked questions, and they were saying things like, okay, so who is Szilva? Szilva's music doesn't fit in the box. What the hell is Szilva's brand? Szilva's style is all over the place. And most of them told me that I had to be a commercial pop artist. The whole dance thing, the whole this is what you wear thing, this is, that thing, to be successful in the industry. And I was not that. So I actually went into like a bit of a depression, feeling like I didn't have a place in this business all of a sudden. My whole collection of music, everything I've worked for, everything I've hoped for, was just worthless. I was too diverse. And that's how I felt by what I was hearing from all these credible sources like music managers and labels and, the industry people. So I just felt like I'd wasted all this time making them songs. I was like, okay, let's go. I swept all my previous music that I'd written under the carpet and started writing straight up pop dance, commercial top 40, just so I could basically fit into the industry mold as an artist. The artist that they wanted me to be, so that I had a chance to be signed or a successful artist. And as time has rolled on, the definition of the word successful artist has certainly evolved and changed for me since I began my journey as an artist. I've met so many other songwriters, bands, and artists along the way. Some of them have been on the Billboard charts, some of them are signed to labels. The picture started looking more and more unpretty as I learned about the sacrifices and the circumstances that many of these creative humans were facing. And the fact is, none of these label signed artists and bands own the publishing rights on their songs. And that was like one of the things that really bothered me. These are songs that they've written, songs that they're known for. These were exclusive deals in perpetuity, and these artists' songs were basically married to this entity that forever controlled their songs. And I just like, this is a horror movie playing in my mind. To me, it felt like giving birth to and raising children and then having them taken away. That's how I felt about the whole thing. Maybe if I had kids, it'd be different. I'm always using that as an analogy. I knew that I didn't want to be tied down to a deal where I didn't have control of my music, and, performing my music, like I was saying, started becoming such a great expense. So I took matters into my own hands and just started exploring the world of sync. I felt I've had all this music in different genres. It's more of a burden if you all have it, in the same genre with licensing, because you have less opportunities to go for. But I thought, let's do this. I discovered that at the end of the day, there was light at the end of that tunnel, because I had all this music. I completely own the rights to solely if I produced it, but also with my collaborator. And having these different genres of music was a blessing in disguise. Everyone thinks, okay, who you know is what you know. Who you know is a big part of this, being successful in the industry, but you don't need to personally know Steven Spielberg or Peter Jackson to get a song in a movie, as we all know. And connecting to music supervisors is great, but like Dondrea was saying yesterday, she said getting a response from a music sub can be such a challenge. As someone in the audience was saying, that it's the music sub that wears the most hats in the industry, which is like true because they have so many responsibilities and so much pressure on them. And they're just inundated with an overflow of emails from songwriters and artists with music that are from people like us that they nearly never listen to. Even Dondre was saying yesterday, I never will click on a link that I get in an email on the spot. If you're lucky, they'll download it and store it in the iTunes, where maybe someday they'll randomly come across it while they're washing dishes or something. So it's becoming kind of hard to connect with music supervisors, and there's just such a demand for them. Everyone knows the secret now. Go get the music supervisors. But aside from reaching out to music supervisors, I have actually personally found that film directors, film producers can take on the responsibility of the music supervisor role. Even music editors, they're a great source to connect with because they'll often put like temp music in whatever they're working on in their visual edit. And then when a director sees that, they're instantly married to that. And sometimes the more you listen to something, even if you hate a song when you first listen to it, it kind of grows on you. So, I mean, if that happens to be your song, then lucky you. And you didn't have to contact a music supervisor for that. You did it through a different avenue. So finding the right people to connect with just comes down to research a lot of the time. It's a lot of work, but it can definitely pay off.
That is so awesome and so resourceful. Like I see it like a building, but there's not just the front door. You've knocked on the supervisor door, and you're like, well, there's other doors, and so you found other doors, and it's just such a smart way to think. So, but can you explain a little bit like what temping and how important it is to get our songs in a temping? Explain that a little bit and how valuable that can be if yours is temped in.
That has certainly got me work in the past as well. If you can connect with editors, they work on so many different styles of music. I know music editors that have worked on horror films, and then they'll do the next project will be like an inspirational something. So there is a need for different types of music, and a lot of music editors, they use resources like, are you familiar with Envato? It's like they have stock footage and stock pictures, but there's also stock music on there. So a lot of them, because it's such a cheap way to do it, but a lot of the time they know that the director is not looking for temp music. They want something that is maybe associated with an artist, because there is, a lot of that in the industry. They want an artist attached to it. They want a story behind the music. So, and it's also a great way to do cross promotions. If you can get your music into that temp situation and just find out the same way you're looking for music supervisors on wherever it is, LinkedIn, look for music editors. And that's a great way to get your music into their iTunes playlists and whatever. So it's just a different avenue. And you've heard me say this before, I know, Steve, but I love the analogy. Music is like a tree, because a tree has many branches, and so does music. There's so many things that we can do with our music. Sync licensing is just one of those things. So there's a lot of different ways as creators that we can monetize. Sync agents and non-exclusive libraries are a great way to go as well. Keyword is research. There are a lot of libraries out there, good and bad, exclusive and non-exclusive. Find these people, online, LinkedIn, Facebook, IMDb. I know we have some artists in the house today and songwriters. I speak to a lot of artists who have great songs and they don't know where to start when it comes to turning their tunes into like a financially viable source of income. There's so many ways that we can make music. And just going back to that tree and branch analogy, I've heard recently that only like 5% of music creators are making a living off sync licensing alone.
Wow.
I hope that's not true, because that is so depressing. For that reason as well, we just need to look at other ways that we can monetize. And it's important to branch out and to look at all the avenues when it comes to creating income for our music. Me personally, aside from pitching my one-stop music, I spend a lot of my time continuing to collaborate and build my catalog, but also build my network, as well as writing for independent projects that include documentaries and docu-series, educational film tools, fundraiser, media, even masterclasses. I'm working on a fitness masterclass right now, which is like right up my alley because that's like my second greatest passion. So creating music for that is really awesome. I also do a lot of session singing and voiceover projects. So again, it's all those branches of that tree that come together and can create that financial stability. Also, it keeps things interesting. It's nothing wasn't doing one thing and one thing only. It kind of just branches you out and keeps things exciting. I actually just wrapped working on an independent feature film about a week ago. And this was something that I was working on for a month. It has a couple of pretty major stars in it, but of course my lips are sealed because I signed an NDA. But what I can tell you is that I was working with the second AD in production. So that job had absolutely nothing to do with music. But I actually connected with one of the producers in person one lunchtime. I just looked at the call sheet, bang, whatever, because there were quite a few producers on this. So anyway, I connected with this producer in over lunch one day, and I asked him, who do I need to speak to for music supervision? Because obviously that person doesn't work in production. They are behind the scenes, so they're not going to be on the call sheet. But anyways, yeah, it so happened that he was the one that was handling this part of the business for this particular feature.
Wow.
So that's what I was saying. Like, it's not just a music supervisor. On a lot of independent projects, there's people that wear a lot of hats. And another thing that about independent projects, there's this idea that, if it's not like, 20th Century Fox or like whoever, Warner Brothers or Disney, then it's low budget if it's independent. That's not true. I've worked on a lot of independent projects that have very healthy budgets. It just means it's not part of a corporation. That's all, guys. There's this affiliation with indie. Okay, they're probably like having people do things for free, but that can be the case, I guess, for like student films and whatnot. But in our industry, there's more and more independent projects that are popping up, and like, look at Netflix, look at all these new shows, and it's just amazing how fast things are growing and more things are happening. So that's exciting for us, because there's always going to be places where music needs to be placed.
Absolutely. And one of the things I think you said is just amazing. That I love that analogy of that tree, because as an artist, some people have just got that one branch and they're like, and then they might have a couple of leaves of merch, but it's only one branch. But you're opening up a whole new world. And because the dream of everybody is to be creative full time and not have to go to go put on the suit and go for a 9-to-5 job. And the goal is to keep being creative. And so you just shared there, you said one way is to use the skills you've got. If you're a singer, which I know you're a phenomenal singer, so voiceovers and doing sessions, that's like a no-brainer. That's like such a great way to just supplement and grow another branch on your tree. And so can you go back over a few of those things that you would recommend for that you've even seen out there, even if you don't do much of it, because some people might know what other options they have.
Fundraiser media is a good way. Like, it's not a blockbuster feature film, but there's a lot of money that goes into charities. A good charity who's smart about what they do will create media for their fundraiser campaigns. These media forms are short little videos that contain original music with an end finale song. And this is something that I've been a part of quite a few times. Even going back to what Sean was showing us, that last clip with all the animals and the wildlife, which I absolutely loved. I've done a lot of that vocally, like the vocal production with Chris, and I'll, with the vocals that kind of just like blend into the music and they just flow together. The fundraiser thing is great. And then obviously, when it's part of something that's for a good cause, that's always a good thing. So I like to think that I split my life into two things. There's like the commercial licensing for film and TV, but then they're also doing something great for society, whether it's for animals, the extinction. I did one a while ago on the last rhino, or homelessness, which I've been involved in a couple of projects for different charities. And I've actually got one coming up for a new charity on the East Coast. But, once you have these, if you can create reels and then go to different charities, and I mean, talking about charities right now, it doesn't have to be that. There's so many different avenues, educational film tools, as well. There's a lot of that going on, especially throughout COVID, where we had these restrictions and we couldn't see each other and everything was on in the box. Education went there, didn't it? A lot of kids, and they had to just say goodbye to university and school and just sit there. Every visual media needs music behind it. Documentaries, docu-series, masterclasses. Most of everyone here plays an instrument, and those work for hire things are really great. You mentioned one the other day, actually, Steve. What was it called?
There's a new one that someone told me about, Songfinch. But then there's Sound Better, there's Fiverr, there's it's all kind of the same kind of thing. Yeah.
Oh, well, I remember when someone first suggested getting on Fiverr, I'm like, I am not singing for $5. Get out of here. You know what I mean? Especially when it's not my baby, but the more I learn about it, I thought, wow, there are artists up here, or singers that you just, they can just be session singers. And that's all they do, and they will sing a song that someone needs a vocal on as a demo or whatever, and a couple of $100, get a few of those a week, and that's a nice branch on the tree. So all these little things adds up, because when we look at royalty statements from our DSPs, like our Spotify plays, and oh my goodness, we'd all be living in cardboard boxes if we depended on that. So that's a little branch, that's a twig on the tree, let's call it that. Yeah, it's just diversifying what we're capable of and what we can do and what we already do. But, like Einstein says, we only use 5% of our brain. Could you imagine if we used 10%? That would be insane. But seriously, it's just about thinking outside the box. These are exciting times, guys. We're coming out of an era where it's just like a tsunami of entertainment coming out since COVID hit, which is really good. It's really healthy for us. How many of people are already involved in sync here? I guess there's people that probably are just looking into getting into sync. Is that right?
Yeah. I tell you what in the chat, anybody who's give us a +1 if you're in the sync world, or you're give us a +2 if you want to be in the sync world. And then we'll see +1s and +2s. There we go.
Okay, so we have a bit of both by the looks of things. So definitely, I want to touch on, preparing for sync. That's, one of the branches that you want to create on your tree, and unless you want to give away your publishing and see what happens with your music in an exclusive library on which you have no say on. I actually do have a handful of songs with, APM, Soho in London, and who else? Sony, ATV, EMI. I have a few, and honestly, I personally have found that just having that full control over my music and doing my own business and being an entrepreneur, it's more rewarding, and I find it more effective too. Preparing for sync opportunities, just retaining the rights to your songs and retaining the rights to your content, and getting your paperwork in order. Okay, that is like imperative. Paperwork is part of it. Audio files and metadata in order is a part of it. So again, if you guys are looking to get into that sync world, there is so many things you have to do apart from registering your song. Metadata is huge. Everyone talks about metadata. For anyone who's new here to the business, I hope this helps. PRO, registering yourself as a writer and a publisher. I can't believe how many songwriters I know that, they're awesome performers and they're awesome songwriters, and they're very new to the sync world, and they're like, oh, I didn't know I had to set up a publishing company. Like, what's that about? Like, I'm looking to get a song published, or music to get published. I'm like, let's talk. And another thing is, if you're uploading your songs to digital distribution services such as DistroKid or TuneCore, so that you can put your music on Spotify and TikTok and Apple and all those other streaming platforms, do not opt in for the digital distributor to represent the publishing portion on those songs. Because once you do that, it means you're not going to be able to pitch that particular song for any sync opportunities. You're not going to be able to put it into music libraries. You're not going to be able to give it to a sync agent. You're basically no longer authorized to pitch that music freely because you don't control 100% of the rights anymore. Paperwork is super important. Is Nis in the crowd today?
I think so.
Oh, hey, Miss. Okay, I see. Hi, how you doing?
Hey.
You actually had a question yesterday in one of the panel chats. I think you asked how can an indie artist protect themselves, right? One of these things is just having your paperwork in order with your collaborators, with any session players that play instruments or sing on your songs, even the people that are creating your artwork, your logo, your photographers. You know, paperwork is number one. That's one of the best ways that you can protect yourself. Obviously, like I mentioned, registering your songs too. I thought of a story when you mentioned that. Not long after I arrived in the United States, I did a photo shoot with a photographer. The photo shoot was intended to be like, you know, promotional purposes for both of us, but we had no paperwork in place. And later down the track, to my absolute horror, I found out that this photographer was selling coffee mugs, mouse pads, key rings with images from that photo shoot.
Oh
And
no.
I was just, I felt so violated. He was monetizing from my images without my permission. And the intention of the photo shoot did not protect my rights. Intentions are great, but that's why you need that paperwork. And that's why I'm telling this story. Now I have a photographer release form that I just basically, you know, put together. It's a one pager, but you know, this is one of the ways, Nis, that we can protect ourselves is to have our paperwork in order. And it's not a big deal. You know, a songwriter agreement it's just like a one pager, and you do that with all your songwriter collaborators, no matter what. The songwriter agreement should always contain a clause that states that all songwriters, you know, involved in the creation of the song are equal owners of the song. And also that each party has like the right to pitch the song as well, because that's fair. The song should remain unencumbered, because I'm sure there's been situations out there where one of the co-writers like finds out about this awesome music library that they didn't know was exclusive at the time, and then the other partner, you know, gets a placement, and then you're going to get bumping heads there because that song is not allowed to be in that film. It's exclusive. And, you know, you have all that. So communication is number one, of course, and then paperwork.
And that's amazing. So who else would you fill paperwork with, like work for hires and collaborators? And
yeah, so we just spoke about the collaborator part of it, and the, you know, producers, any instrumentalists, if you have a violinist or a, you know, guitarist that didn't write any of the music, but, you know, you gave them whatever, however much in exchange for their services, and they do not have any right or ownership of the song. And then another thing is like having a split sheet as well for all your collaborators. So this should include information, you know, songwriter one, PRO, writer IPI, publisher PRO, publisher company, publisher IPI, and then personal detail. Oh, song splits, obviously, percentages, and then personal details like name, phone number, email, address. Some people put like social security. It's really, this is like an agreement between you and your co-writer. So, and it's important. Also, like I was saying with the photographer thing, artwork, anyone that's any, you know, graphic artist that's creating a logo, photographer, that kind of thing, because that's part of your song. If your song ends up doing very well in a movie or wherever, you don't want to have people knocking on your door and saying, hey, what's going on? That song became big because of that photo or that logo. That's what made it. And then you start this, I mean, you see it amongst artists and actors now, you know, people suing people left, right, and center. So that paperwork is imperative for everyone from the beginner to the top shelves, you know.
absolutely. And in this day and age, like with TikTok and anything can go viral like that. So you got to protect yourself. I think you've been dropping some gems there. That's really, really powerful.
It's not uncommon for issues to arise down the track. I'm sure we've all been in situations where things went south with someone that we've worked with. I actually had a co-writer friend who worked on a song with a songwriter from the East Coast, and they had a falling out, you know, shortly after they finished the song. And then months later, this friend of mine had an amazing opportunity to place that song in like a network TV show. And he reached out to this collaborator, an ex-buddy, and his ex-buddy was like, no, don't want anything to do with it. You know, whatever, I don't care, like goodbye, just stop bothering me. And it sounds ridiculous because he was hurting himself just as much, right? He was a co-writer. But at the end of the day, these things happen. And that's why it's important to set your terms before you even write one note, before you even put one word down as a lyric. It's just really important. So many little things that we have to think of.
It's so powerful. And the one thing I would recommend for everybody as well is sometimes it might be hard to kind of start that conversation, be like, hey, let's sign this form, but it gets more comfortable the more times you do it, and it's more of just a conversational thing.
Fear is our biggest enemy. Don't ever feel afraid to give someone that you're working with an agreement, because that paperwork is not just there to protect you, it's to protect them as well. It's a mutual agreement. Don't get me started on fear. I have a song called Resistance, and it's all about that inner force.
I'd love to hear it, and I don't know, can you tell everybody where to go to hear that? Because I think you tapped on something that's very powerful for everybody, including me. We all have levels of fear, whatever that is. That's whatever that line is. You get to that point, and it's like, you're freaking out. And I think it would really help some people to be able to hear that song. Where can they find that?
If you just Google Szilva, which is Szilva, and then Resistance, which is REZ. Z if you're an American, ISTANC. It's on my YouTube. So Szilva Music is all of my social media handles. It's TikTok, it's Facebook, it's YouTube, I think Twitter's just Szilva. And
Szilva is SZILVA. So,
yeah, my parents named me after a plum.
A plum?
Yeah, my first language is Hungarian, and Szilva means plum in Hungarian. So
cool.
Yeah, when you mentioned that whole thing about fear, and I actually, the song Resistance, what inspired me to write that song was a book by Stephen Collom called The War of Art. I don't know if any of you guys know about this book. It's not The Art of War, which is another book, which is probably more well known, but The War of Art is about that, that inner little, why are you going to do that? Don't waste your time. You're not going to make it. What makes you think it's that little that you want to stomp on? Because what prevents us from doing things in our life? It's that we're not good enough or whatever. To me, the worst thing that could ever happen in my life, decades down the track, sitting on that couch and being like, what if I actually tried to do what I was so passionate about? My life may have been very different. I think one of the worst things in life is regret, because you can't change that. It is what it is. It's in the past. I'd say give it a go. Do whatever you're passionate about. If you find a new branch for your tree, but it's not really something that you specialize in, maybe, or it's not something that everyone is talking about, like music supervisors, that doesn't mean it's not worth going there and exploring and knocking on that door.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. I think that's we could talk about that for a while, because I think that's at the key. That's at the core value of everybody. There's an issue there that's stopping them from doing or whatever. But there is a few questions in the chat. If I can read them out to you, if it's easier to. Here's a question: what kind of deal would one strike with a graphic designer and a photographer? Would you do a split, or would you pay them? Would it be a work for hire?
That would be a work for hire. Absolutely. Yeah, that would definitely. Anyone that it wasn't part of the if you're talking about a graphic designer, for some kind of artwork for a song, or a photographer, definitely work for hire. Yeah. Anyone that's not directly involved in the creation process of the song. And sometimes, you write with a couple of people, or usually for me, it's a one-on-one kind of situation. But yeah, if you're not involved in that creative process, a graphic designer can't have a piece of song. Yeah. I mean, not for me. It is what you want to, what you make it, right? So if you want to give I don't know, I understand why you'd want to give a graphic designer like 5%. Just pay them up front. You know what I mean? Yeah. Give them their money. It's their service. Adios. I'll work with you next time. But that is, yeah. I mean, you could give them a percentage, but I wouldn't.
No, I wouldn't either. I'd just save up and give them 10, 20, 30, 40, $50, whatever it is that they need. And that's the absolute, great.
Or like whatever, 500, but whatever it is, it's a work for hire.
Yeah.
You have no ownership in this song. It's, even though they've created artwork for it, that's a completely separate deal.
Jen said a great thing here. She goes, you don't give a plumber part ownership of your home. So here's another question that's really cool too. If you ever get an opportunity to work with a big name artist, either as a producer or songwriter, feature, etc., when is a good time to bring up the splits and back end negotiations?
Unless you're prepared to be just stomped on, as early as you can.
Yeah.
Because once you start doing work and you start getting comfortable, it not only makes it harder for you to approach the situation, because they're like, oh, why all of a sudden you're bringing up, splits and ownership? Oh, you want to monetize off me, and all that kind of stuff. But definitely upfront, as early as you can. And if the deal falls through, if they wanted to just be like, oh, this was for your exposure or something down the track, like that can happen. I always think anything can happen. And just that peace of mind of knowing the terms before you step foot into a song.
Yeah.
That creates peace. It opens up the, inspiration, and it's just better.
It's so funny. That reminds me of, my artist days of playing at shows and stuff. And sometimes the promoter would be like, we can't pay you, but, can you do it for exposure? And I never said it, but I always wish that I could say it to it and go back and say, oh, really? Okay, well, let's drop you in the middle of the desert and see if you like the exposure and see if you'll die from exposure.
This is the nature of our business. And we're always going to get more no's than we're going to get yeses, right? Yeah. The most successful people in the world have had the most failures. Yep. And I hate to call them failures, because they're only failures when we don't learn from them and then we repeat that mistake, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So one more question up here. It's a good question by Dave. What are your thoughts on attending events like film festivals or joining other teams? I love film festivals. I've actually worked on quite a few independent projects that have been, in film festivals. And yeah, I worked on one where Chris and I created the music for it and the end credit song. We were in in film festivals, not just here in the States, but all over the world. We were in one in Australia, we were in a couple in Canada, a couple in Europe. I think there's one in like Spain. Go to film festivals. It's a great way to meet filmmakers and other creative beings that need music for their visual projects, whatever they're currently working on, because everyone's always working on something. Film festivals are a really good way to go. And what was the other one? Oh, and other teams, I guess, like maybe other collaborating teams or songwriting teams, maybe, or. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the more you can diversify your catalog, the better. And, pretty much all of us, I'm sure, will find that when we're working with different people, the dimension is different. We somehow just maybe come up with something that we have never come up with other songwriters, just a style almost. It's just like those energies, like two energies can just create something very unique. So the more of that you can get, the more diversity, the better. So I highly encourage collaborating and songwriter groups and teams, as you say. Yeah. Sorry, you go. I was just going to say, like, we can either take our experiences and what we've been dealt with, and allow us to make it a better person or a bitter person. So it's so important to keep our chins up and just keep going, guys. I don't know if you have any last final things you want to maybe that was it, just to keep going and just not to collect those no's but yeah. So any last words, I guess, as we wrap up? On a final note, it's just so important to keep plowing away, create music you love, be authentic to your music. Don't be afraid of trying different genres and seeing where that goes. Learn your business. Learning our business is imperative. And just, look around for the things that inspire you and be prepared for disappointment. But most importantly, just never give up. Wow, that is absolutely amazing. And to see the same success that you've seen, that's your keys, that's your philosophy. Don't give up. And I love that the analogy of that tree, because we all love those tall trees that have got so many branches and they're just so fruitful, and they're just, and this is one key to do it, to diversify, to take these steps that you've shared today, and grow our tree. I love it. Thank you so much, Szilva, for sharing.
Everyone has a unique tree, guys. You're all different and you're all amazing in different ways. So whatever you're doing, keep it up.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Szilva. That was absolutely amazing.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure, and it's great to see all your faces. So stay in touch.
Awesome. Okay, guys. So we're wrapped up for today.